I'm Paul Edwards. I'm a self-published horror author, and first and foremost, a monster kid. Today I'm reading Monster World Magazine, issue number 8 from 1966. I thought some of you might enjoy looking through this great old monster magazine with me. Just in case you don't own your own copy of Monster World Magazine, issue number 8 from 1966. And together we can see what kinds of vintage monster goodness is in here. All right, Monster World Magazine. Beware of Dr. X sounds like good advice. These two films, Jesse James Meets Frankenstein's Daughter and Billy the Kid vs. Dracula, are a ready-made double feature. In fact, I used to see these two films in this order on Creature Double Feature on WLVI TV Channel 56 in Massachusetts back in the 1970s, which is the glory days of my monster kid youth. Jesse James Meets Frankenstein's Daughter and Billy the Kid vs. Dracula. The Jesse James one is a better film, but the Billy the Kid one, at least you get John Carradine, who is a real actor who somehow wound up doing this. So here we go. We're already starting with the bad jokes. Big Brother has his eye on you. Great. Okay. Contents. Okay, Dr. X plus the return of Dr. X. Well, despite the names, these movies are completely unrelated. Dr. X is a pre-Hays Code, rather grim horror film. It's excellent. The Return of Dr. X was made about 10 years later. It starred Humphrey Bogart in a rare horror film appearance, but it had nothing to do with the events of Dr. X. But okay, this is what we want anyway. Jesse James Meets Frankenstein's Daughter and Billy the Kid versus Dracula. But we're also going to get The Day the World Ended, Behind the Eighth Ball, and the Golem. Not the character from Lord of the Rings. This is something different. All right, let's see what we got. Dr. X. Which one of these scientists is the maniacal moon murderer? Can you guess before you read the story of Dr. X? And it summarizes the whole movie, just in case you've never seen the movie and don't care about spoilers. It gives you a whole breakdown of it. Or if you have seen the movie, sometimes it's fun to read it and see what they got right and what they got wrong in their descriptions. This might almost be Frederick March in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But no. Okay. Whoa. Makeup by the Max Factor Company. That's nice. That's great. Oop. There's the Fiend from Dr. X. So, spoiler alert for a over 90-year-old movie. This is the big reveal scene where the Fiend is yelling out, synthetic flesh, which is why his appearance is so drastically different. Now this is from The Return of Dr. X, which is the unrelated movie in which Humphrey Bogart appeared. The reason that he was so pale, they made him up to look extra pale, is that he may or may not still have been alive. But he was up and around and moving. The Monster's Victim. First Fritz, then Dr. Waldman, die at the hands of the Frankenstein creation. Of course, this is from the 1931 Frankenstein, starring Boris Karloff. So here's the masterpiece Frankenstein makeup from the 1931 Frankenstein. And on the next set of pages, you get the less than masterful Frankenstein monster makeup from Jesse James Meets Frankenstein's Daughter. The Monster War Spurs. Yeah. Well, you get a good picture spread, even though the images are not great. I do love the fact that the Dr. Frankenstein in this, who is right here, she just decides when she's turned her victim into a Frankenstein monster that she's going to rename him Igor. And so all of a sudden she's saying, "Come, Igor, do this and that, Igor." It's a pretty lame attempt to mimic the feel of the Universal horror films by getting an Igor in there. This guy is what was left of Jesse James' sidekick. He got monsterfied. Okay, John Carradine was really a great actor. He had an extremely deep voice and was quite theatrical. He did, however, fall into a pattern of taking any part they would offer him, especially by the 1960s. And so he's in Billy the Kid versus Dracula. And this was not the first time he had played Count Dracula. He had played Count Dracula in House of Frankenstein and in House of Dracula back in the 1940s. Neither of which was a superb movie, but both of them were Oscar-worthy compared to Billy the Kid versus Dracula. You know, sometimes these magazines would have "you asked for it," and they would show pictures that you asked for. Here they're saying, "it asked for you." That's pretty funny. I like that. Oh. This is from The Unknown, a silent film. This is Lon Chaney Sr., the forefather of all great horror movie actors. This film, The Unknown, is on my Silent Horror Films podcast. You can check it out and see it for yourself. Briefly, he plays an armless knife thrower in a circus performance. But his terrible secret is he really does have arms. He just has taught himself to do everything using his feet so that he can do this gimmick where he's an armless performer. And he's in love with one of the young women that performs in the circus, who thinks that he has no arms. She sees him commit murder of her father. She doesn't see his face, but she sees that the person who commits the murder has arms. And she sees the arm, throttling her father. So in order to conceal from this love of his life the fact that he was the one that killed her father, he finds a crooked doctor and pays to have his arms amputated. The story goes on from there, and in typical O. Henry fashion, the discovery he makes once he gets his arms amputated just makes it even more disturbing. I mentioned the Hays Code earlier. There was a reason why the Hays Code was introduced. I'm not saying I'm for it, but it wasn't completely baseless. There was a lot of grim, gruesome stuff in the 20s and early 30s in the movies. And then the Hays Code was a response to that. And all of a sudden, horror movies were extremely sanitized for the rest of the 30s and especially through the 1940s. That's Luna, the Batgirl from Mark of the Vampire, starring Bela Lugosi. This is from the silent horror film The Lost World, which you can also find on my Silent Horror Films podcast. It was the first feature-length dinosaur film, and there were plenty of dinosaurs in it too. This is, of course, from Bride of Frankenstein. The Day the World Ended. Richard Denning. You might remember him from Creature from the Black Lagoon. Yeah. There's your monster for you. Oh, there's an even better shot of the monster. Or worse, you decide. But a picture like this is big enough that a kid could have cut this half page out of the magazine and taped that in their notebook or something. So a picture like that for a monster kid in 1966 is pretty good. I love these behind the scenes pictures. That's great. Oh my gosh. That is a very, very young Roger Corman. Can you imagine? Oh, you can get back issues of Creepy. That was also a publication by the same company, Warren. Behind the Eight Ball. Yikes. The first horror film franchise in history was not Dracula or Frankenstein. It was The Golem. Not Gollum from Lord of the Rings. That's spelled differently. The Golem. The Golem is sort of a homunculus, a clay figure that is brought to light by means of an ancient ritual and used to defend the villagers who are being oppressed. There were 3 Golem movies, only one of which we have today in its entirety. One of them is lost, and one of them is partly lost, although we do have some footage from it. And then one of them we actually do have the whole thing. Golem nice mode, Golem in kill mode. Yikes. You can get your back issues of Famous Monsters of Filmland, the magazine that started the trend of all these monster magazines. Terror Talk. Happy birthday, Christopher Lee. It's funny because in another magazine I was looking at recently, there was another Christopher Lee birthday. It was a very different birthday though. Okay. Countdown to Doom. Remember, this is 1966. The Adam West Batman TV show was on the air. No surprise that there was a Batman model you could buy. Only 98 cents, too. Fang Mail. Do you know what film this picture of Boris Karloff is from? Give up. Abbott and Costello meet the killer. Of course, they sell a few paperback novels so that you can tell your parents, these monster magazines aren't rotting my brain. See, I got actual literature out of them. How many of these have you read, though? I have read The War of the Worlds, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and The Invisible Man. I have started but not finished Frankenstein. You can send away to get your own horror films to show on your home movie projector. Oh, here they only want $5.95 each for a reel of film from any of these monster movies. But it wasn't the whole film. It was like 10 minutes of it. Remember how I mentioned my silent horror films podcast? Well, on that podcast, you can see The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which this caption is referring to. And you can see Nosferatu, which this is a picture from. What I cannot show you is why they would put a picture of Nosferatu and caption it The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. I have no answers for you. Maybe they thought kids wouldn't know the difference. Ooh, Beast with 5 fingers for the win. Although, it's hard to top the Lugosi Dracula. Okay, these were huge sellers for monster kids in the 60s. Dracula's Dragster, Wolfman's Wolfwagon, The Mummy's Chariot, and Frankenstein's Flivver. And they were 98 cents each, but if you couldn't afford all 4 of them, because you were a kid in the 1960s, you could buy one, and the kid next door could buy the Wolfman's Wolfwagon, and the kid down the block could get the Mummy's Chariot, and so forth. And then you would race them, see? Oh, vinyl albums. I have this, Famous Monsters Speak. It's interesting because you can see a whole bunch of monsters on the cover. In truth, side A is a Frankenstein story, and side B is a Dracula story. You don't hear any Wolfman story or Creature from the Black Lagoon story or Mummy story. But if you were a monster kid in the 60s, you would take what you could get. Ooh, let's get a Venus flytrap. Dracula's own rubber bat. Why would Dracula want a rubber bat? Oh, you can get back issues of Monster World. Nice. Nice. Hollywood Masks. Some of these really are pretty good. Let me get a little closer here. Yeah, look at that. Some of these masks are really not bad at all. Look at that. Look at the work on the Wolfman one. Yep. Now if you check out the prices, I hope this shows up on camera. They're pretty steep. Remembering that this is 1960s money, they're pretty steep. But you get what you pay for. Some of the magazines like this advertised masks and didn't show you a picture of them. They just showed you an artist's rendition of what you were getting. As my sons would say, that's sus. I like to see a picture of what I'm buying, especially if I'm buying it by mail order. But these guys did it the right way, because these are a classier set of productions. You can actually see what you're getting. Hey, listen, thanks for checking out this great vintage monster magazine with me. If you're a fan of classic monsters and vintage horror, you would love my book series, the Mourner's Woods books. I sell them on Amazon.com. I'm self-published. I have 6 out so far. It could be more by the time you see this video. I average about 1 a year. And I have all different monsters in them. And they're just the thing. I try to capture the vibe and feel of vintage horror, but in contemporary settings. So check out my book series. My name again is Paul Edwards. My books are the Mourner's Woods books. Thanks for spending some time reading through Monster World Magazine issue number 8 with me. I'll see you in Mourner's Woods.